Hello, Archie Dunlop here with Talking Astrology with Archie on Wednesday, August the 16th, 2023. Today I'm going to go back to my previous format. I'm going to talk about today's astrology and then I'm going to look at today's topic, which is Julian Assange. Now, a couple of days ago I looked at the horoscope of Alexei Navalny, the Russian opposition leader, who is in prison. And, we sometimes think that, we only get political prisoners in places like Russia. We don't have political prisoners in the West. But arguably, Julian Assange is a political prisoner and he is being held in the UK and he is in danger of being extradited to the US. Now, he hasn't had to deal with the kind of attacks that Alexei Navalny has had to deal with, like Novichok and corrosive green dye, but nonetheless we could argue that Julian Assange is a political prisoner. The Americans are upset that he leaked information, for example, about American atrocities in Iraq. They didn't want people to know. Surely we should know. Anyway, what I want to do today is look at Julian Assange's horoscope. And incidentally, he is born very close to Elon Musk. Julian Assange was born on July the 3rd, 1971, and Elon Musk was born on June the 28th, 1971. So the two men are born close together, and I'm just wondering, what similarities do they have? Anyway, before I consider that, I want to look at the astrology for today, which is Wednesday, August the 16th, 2023. So the most important thing going on today is that there is a new moon, and I do have a separate video about this new moon. So this new moon is in Leo, Sun still in Leo, and new moons represent a new beginning. The moon is no longer waning; it is now waxing. It is getting bigger. So if you have got some plan or idea you want to put into practice, now might be your chance. You've worked it all through, and if you've got the confidence and you've got the experience, go for it. So that's the main thing going on today. But as I said when I was looking at the new moon in detail for a whole video, new moons are quite a secretive time. It's not a time to tell everyone what we're doing. It's quite unnecessary. The beginning of things should be very quiet. It should be dark. We don't want the glare of publicity. The glare of publicity at too early a stage can actually destroy things. Now, apart from the new moon, there is an 120-degree aspect between Mars and Uranus. So Mars is quite an aggressive energy. I don't necessarily mean aggressive in a bad way. We want to take action. We may have to interact with other people, telling them that we're right and perhaps they're wrong. And Mars trine Uranus. Uranus is a planet of earthquakes, of explosions, of surprises. So it's a time when we can be dramatic. Suddenly, out of a blue, we can tell the world what we want. everyone might be so surprised that they just give in without a fight. So that is an advantage of Mars trine Uranus. There is a disadvantage. People might jump to conclusions. They may take action without fully thinking through the consequences. Also, Jupiter is at exactly 15 degrees Taurus. And when you hear that, you might respond, so what? Well, 15 degrees Taurus is halfway between 0 degrees Aries and 0 degrees Cancer. So we can say that Jupiter is 45 degrees from the Aries point. Now, this means that the Jupiter principle becomes very important. The Aries point is the world at large. It may be our opportunity to show the world who we are. Jupiter is an expansive influence. It's often connected with our philosophies, our ideas. Sometimes it's got a religious or spiritual perspective. So, if we've got ideas, now may be our chance to tell the world what's on our mind. The world, perhaps needs to hear what we've got to say. Perhaps we can make the world a better place. Perhaps we can stir people into action. So, if you have got something to say, nothing. I'm not talking about anything trivial. If you've got something really big to do with ideas, religion, politics, now might be a very good opportunity to tell everyone what's on your mind, because you just never know how they're going to respond. Of course, there might be a negative response, but that's perhaps that's part of a risk, and we really can't expect everyone to agree with us. So anyway, let's now. One thing I should point out is that the moon is moving into Virgo, but it depends where you are. Now, if you are in New York, the moon moves into Virgo at 7:14 p.m. If you're in Los Angeles, it moves into Virgo at 4:14 p.m. If you're in London, it moves into Virgo tomorrow, so it doesn't really affect you. If in the Americas, this evening the moon will be in Virgo, and so those of us living in America might experience a sudden change. On one hand, there may be sort of less of a focus on sort of egos, less of a focus on dramatic action, more of a focus on sorting out the details, focusing on material reality, that kind of thing. But the moon will be in a new sign. The moon will actually be going somewhere. So this evening in the Americas, there may actually be a greater sense of purpose, although that sense of purpose will probably be of a fairly materialistic nature. If you're not in the Americas, you don't have to worry about it. So now let's look at the astrology, my forecasts for the 12 signs. So here we go. These are my forecasts for today, which is Wednesday, August the 16th, 2023. Aries, you're a hard person to predict, especially now when Mars is aspecting Uranus. You're in one state of mind, then suddenly you shift into something else, and the world is expected to go along with you. But you have to ask yourself why you are doing what you are doing. Is it because you're inspired, or is it because you just lack discipline? Taurus. There is not much you need to do, particularly if you're outside the Americas. Your initiatives are unlikely to have an immediate effect, and patience will be the order of the day. And it's probably okay to stay at home. However, other people are in the mood for action, though that doesn't mean that you have to join in. Gemini, you've made your point, and now you have to see what happens. Some people have understood your message, others still don't know what's going on. For your part, it's best to take a tolerant approach, and you should understand that you can't please everyone. An exploratory phone call can have big consequences. Cancer, today's new moon could have financial implications. You could see your finances in a new way, and you might have ideas about how best to balance your income and expenditure. But it's important that you have some modesty. You might think that you've got good ideas, though in the light of day they might have to be adjusted. Leo, there's a new moon in your star sign. It only happens once a year, and it's a time when Leos can rededicate themselves, perhaps to a cause or a set of ideas or to a moral code. You don't have to make a big fuss about it. You just have to make a quiet resolution that in a year's time you'll be a better and a wiser person. Virgo, Mars, while moving through your star sign, makes a powerful aspect to Uranus. You can have a real influence over your immediate environment, and you just have to be yourself. It's because your way of doing things is at odds with accepted norms, and you certainly don't have to make a big effort to attract other people's attention. Libra, there continues to be a lot of people around you, but where are they going and what are they doing? On closer examination, it may be that everyone is wasting their time, and your best bet may be to step aside. But there's one person who shouldn't be discounted. They have a huge amount of energy, and they can do you the world of good. Scorpio, there are things you want, and it's not for nothing that one of the key words of Scorpio is desire. And it seems that you're impatient. Today's new moon sets you on the right path, but it doesn't bring immediate results. You have to let your desire burn for a little longer, and you mustn't act before the time is right. Sagittarius, Jupiter, your ruling planet, is at 15 degrees Taurus. This is important because it is exactly 45 degrees from the Aries point. You see the world for what it is, and there is a moment when you can tap into the wider cosmic trends. And armed with knowledge and inspiration, you can show real leadership. Capricorn, recent complications are starting to resolve themselves. They are still hanging in the air, but they're taking up less of your time. And if you're in the Americas, then this evening you have a chance to completely change the scene. Even if you're not in the Americas, you start seeing new possibilities. Aquarius, if there is something you have to say, then maybe you should say it, because the opportunity is starting to fade away. Maybe someone is getting ready to exit the scene, or a favourable situation is about to come to a close. But one assertive action on your part can change everything. Pisces, it is not a day to underestimate people. Someone who seems harmless and unassuming might have a surprise up their sleeve. It then goes without saying that provocative behaviour should be avoided. But if you focus on yourself and you keep quiet for a moment, you'll realize that you understand your environment in a powerful and meaningful way. So I'm now going to switch to the I Ching. And as always, I threw 3 coins in the air and I asked the question, what is Wednesday going to be like for visitors to my YouTube channel? So the first hexagram I threw was hexagram number 61. Inner truth. Inner truth is, as it says, it's about uncovering the truth. It's about the truth being completely evident. We just know it. It's obvious. We don't have to kind of analyze it or work it out. It's just there. And the inner truth can reside in our hearts. So when we have truth in our hearts, if it's not about ego, it's not about believing it's really important to be for you to be right and someone else to be wrong. It's just understanding the truth. When we have truth in our hearts, the I Ching tells us that, the whole world recognizes it. People hundreds, thousands of miles away just intuit the fact that we have the truth in our hearts. So, we can be in the middle of nowhere with the truth in our hearts, and people will want to be in touch with us. We are not going to be ignored. Those with the truth, they've got something special. And so the I Ching tells us, if we are really true to ourselves, you imagine, people hundreds, thousands of miles away are going to want to be in touch. And just think, what about the people really close to us? They're really, really going to want to be in touch. So, that is great. But having the truth sometimes, isn't enough. It's not the whole story. Because, we can tell people the truth. We can explain what the truth is. But it's just words. The words come out of our mouth, and maybe some people will listen to what we're saying. Maybe they won't. Maybe they'll only listen to what we're saying if the time is right. When the time is wrong, perhaps people are in a hurry, they might ignore us or be thinking about something else. Overall, we might find a certain amount of inconsistency in terms of how people respond to us. Like in the first instance, people are going to say, "Yeah, you're great. You're speaking the truth. You represent the truth." But then maybe they'll just get a bit bored of us, and they'll just listen to us, and maybe they'll listen. Well, maybe they'll hear the words, but will they actually be listening? They might hear, but they won't necessarily listen. And so there's a danger that in the end, we could be wasting our time. The symbol that I Ching uses for this is a rooster. Yeah, it makes a lot of noise, but so what? And the inner truth, this hexagram, it moves. It moves to hexagram number 3, difficulty at the beginning. And this kind of reinforces what I was saying. Yeah, we're trying to explain to people the truth. We're trying to tell people, how things really are. But yeah, at first it's going to be hard work, as I've just been saying. We're not going to have immediate success. But it is difficulty at the beginning. It doesn't say it's difficulty at the ending. So if we are persistent and we hold the truth within ourselves, we live by the truth, at first we might be ignored, but in the end, people will take notice of us, and we will be able to have a positive influence. So let's now go back to the astrology. And I want to look at the horoscope of Julian Assange. So there he is. There's a picture of Julian Assange. Here is his natal chart. He was born on July the 3rd, 1971, at apparently 3 p.m. In Townsville, Australia. The Rodden rating for this time of birth is a B, and that means B, I think, for biography or an autobiography. It was in a book, so it's a pretty good rating, B. It's better for an X or a DD for dirty data. So we will go with this 3 p.m. chart. So what do we notice about this chart? Well, the chart is somewhat unbalanced. All of the planets are, most of the planets are kind of towards the top of the chart. The top of the chart is, related to publicity, how we present ourselves to the world, and clearly Julian Assange is just always in the news. I mean, he's been in the news a great deal. Even when he's been in, is it Belmarsh prison in England for some time? We know with all this stuff about whether or not he's going to get extradited to the United States. He has never been kept out of the public eye, and this has been the case for a very long time. That's what happens when you have all those planets up there above the horizon. So that's the first point to make about the chart. When I talked about when I talked about Alexei Navalny. Now remember, Alexei Navalny has just been sentenced to an extra 19 years in prison in Russia. When we looked at his chart, I just want to show you something. Go back to his chart. We notice that Alexei Navalny has the moon in the 12th house. Now, in astrology, the 12th house often relates to prisons. So perhaps if you've got the moon in the 12th house, some people, at least some people with moon in the 12th house, will find themselves in prison, not because they've got moon in the 12th house, but perhaps at some level, like with Navalny, he actually went back from Germany. When he was in Germany, remember, after he had been poisoned with Novichok, he was in Germany, he was treated, then he went back to Russia. He must have known that he was going to be arrested and sent to prison. It was like that moon is almost like a powerful pull. That's what he had to do. He couldn't help himself. And with Julian Assange, okay, I must emphasize, I believe he is a political prisoner like Alexei Navalny, but of course he hasn't suffered in the same way that Navalny has. But he has moon in Scorpio in the 12th house. It's almost like Julian Assange, deep down just knows that he has to spend some time in prison almost. His involvement with WikiLeaks. I think he was hacking into things because he was born in Australia. Was hacking from a very early age. So that moon in the 12th certainly describes the situation that he's in. Now, I mean, as far as what is perhaps the most important thing in his chart, well, he's got a Sun square Uranus. Sun square Uranus. Okay, it might be related to computing. Uranus is a natural ruler of computers and technology. Again, hacker at a very early age. So that's one aspect of Sun square Uranus. It might just be about a life where just things happen. He just can't help himself. Events happen, and there's really nothing he can do. Nothing much he can do about it. Now, when I looked at his chart, I saw that he has a Saturn-Neptune opposition. And so I was trying to work out, what does it mean to have a Saturn-Neptune opposition? So, and particularly in his case, it's an angular Saturn-Neptune opposition, if his birth time is correct. He's got Saturn exactly on the 7th house cusp, pretty close, and he's got Neptune very close to the 1st house cusp. So with Neptune rising, you could see the sort of cloak of secrecy. The hacker perhaps doing things in a secretive way, but because he's got all these planets above the horizon, in the end it all gets out, doesn't it? And so there's a subterfuge with Neptune. Then Saturn on the 7th house cusp. 7th house cusp is about your enemies. He's got powerful enemies. He certainly has. So how do you bring together Saturn and Neptune? I was thinking maybe Saturn-Neptune is about having real doubts about the government and not trusting the government. Perhaps believing that government is up to no good. Saturn-Neptune is about sort of fear, maybe, because I've always seen Saturn-Neptune as being about fear. But the reason I focused on that is because I just noticed that someone, as I just said at the beginning of this video, that Elon Musk was born only a few days before Julian Assange. So I'll quickly just look at Elon Musk's horoscope. We don't have a time of birth for Elon Musk. But there you go. You see, he's got Saturn-Neptune. He's also got the Saturn-Neptune opposition. So which makes me think, how do Elon Musk and Julian Assange both manifest this? And I'm thinking it is about a distrust of governments. Elon Musk has, I think, sort of picked up on people's people getting into conspiracy theories, and maybe it's I'm beginning to think, I used to be someone, by the way, I never believed in conspiracy theories, but somehow over the last year I find I'm sort of questioning that. I'm now thinking some of these conspiracy theories maybe they're not as crazy as they sound. It's kind of worrying, that. But I've got a Saturn-Neptune square, by the way, so maybe it was inevitable that in the end I'd start to believe in conspiracy theories. But I do think that Elon Musk and Julian Assange both do have this distrust of government, and are also into this open, sort of open government, all information being free. I know that, Elon Musk has said that he's against censorship. That's part of his public sort of, I don't know whether it's true or not, but what he says publicly about Twitter, the idea of banning accounts and so on, is not part of his ethos. I mean, I don't really know what's happening on Twitter. I'm not an active user of Twitter, so there is a connection there. We also see that both Elon Musk and Julian Assange have made maximum use of technology, though in their own different ways. They have been very impacted by technology, but there are differences between the two men. Elon Musk has Moon in Virgo, and Julian Assange has Moon in Scorpio. Moon in Scorpio, going back to his moon in Scorpio, he's got, moon early Scorpio. It's a difficult place for the moon. It maybe can be a little self-destructive, perhaps. Early Scorpio, it's in the Via Combusta. Things can happen with moon in the early Scorpio, and he's very focused on what he wants to do, and nothing can stop him until he's in a situation where he is at risk of being extradited to America, and so will he ever come back? Although there is this news now that the reason I'm talking about Julian Assange now is because I was reading this news that there's talk about potentially a plea deal, but maybe he's not going to go to prison forever. Some people are suggesting he might spend the rest of his life in prison, but maybe there's a plea deal. Maybe that will help. Maybe that'll help him. But maybe with Moon and Scorpio, he is stubborn, Julian Assange. Maybe he's not going to want to do a plea deal. Now, as far as what's going on in his life, well, I just looked at solar arc directions. So I will look. I did some solar arc directions for him. These are his solar arc directions for June 19th, 2012. Now, that was when he sought refuge in the Ecuadorian embassy in London. So I thought it'd be interesting to look at the two charts. So let's Julian Assange in the middle and. Right. So what was going on when he took when Julian Assange took refuge in the Ecuadorian embassy? So if we click his planet, his chart, so he would have been 29 plus 12. He would have been what, about 29, 12. He would have been about 41, something like that. When he sought refuge in the Ecuadorian embassy. So we're moving all his planets, 41 degrees. So there is his. So look, there is his Saturn-Neptune opposition. So when you're doing solar arc directions, I'd recommend that if you want to look at the really important solar arc directions, try to focus not just on one planet, but if you've got two planets that are in opposition to each other, closely in opposition, maybe you should be focusing on them, and you direct the opposition. So if we move this Saturn-Neptune opposition 41 degrees, it moves forward to 1049 Cancer. In other words, directly conjunct his Sun in Cancer. So having Saturn opposition Neptune on his Sun, this was the beginning of his great saga. He spent 7 years in the Ecuadorian embassy. Then the Ecuadorian government decided to, allowed the British police to go in and arrest him in, I think it was 2019. So that was the beginning of it all, and his confinement in the Ecuadorian embassy. And so, that I think fits. Notice also that Julian Assange, there's his Sun at 1039 when he was born. When he went into the Ecuadorian embassy, the Sun had moved on to 1946 Leo. So he had directed Sun was exactly on his midheaven when he went to the Ecuadorian embassy. So this was, I suppose that was when he. Midheaven is about being seen in public. It's not just about career, and so that's certainly what happened. It was a major world news, not just news in Britain or Australia, but he was in the Ecuadorian embassy. One other thing that was going on 2011, 2012 is that Mars hit the Aries point. So you can see that he had Mars at 21. Mars at 21 Aquarius, and so it had moved on to 0 degrees 41 Aries. So Mars is how he asserts himself. So 2011, 2012, the Aries point represents the world at large. So when you have a planet directed onto the Aries point, particularly if you're a public person, that's when everyone gets to hear about you. You become world news, and of course that's when WikiLeaks just everyone heard of WikiLeaks around then, 2011, 2012. So what about now? Yes, there's talk of him being of a plea deal. There's also talk about him being in imminent danger of being extradited to the US. So we can follow through his right. These are his solar arc directions for pretty much now, middle of August 2023. So it might be a good idea to compare them. So how have things moved on? His progressed Sun has now moved into Virgo. And you can see that his progressed Sun is now square his Saturn-Neptune, his natal Saturn-Neptune opposition. I don't know, that's difficult. That does indicate that there are difficulties ahead for him. I mean, maybe, I don't know, will this plea deal work out? Is he going to want a plea deal? I would have thought Julian Assange is in a bit of danger here with his progressed Sun on his Saturn-Neptune midpoint. Also, that 0 degrees Virgo, in November, transiting Saturn goes direct at around 0 degrees 30 Virgo. So, I think Julian Assange has to think carefully about all of this. Maybe he doesn't want to do a plea deal, but maybe he has to think about himself. That moon, we know his moon in Scorpio may be very stubborn, and maybe at some level he has kind of resigned himself to spend even longer in prison. God, back to Navalny has just been sentenced to another 19 years in prison, and so in Russia. Assange, maybe he has a chance to get out of prison quickly, but what does he have to compromise? What does he have to give away to do that? So yeah, I think that is tricky with Assange's progressed Sun hitting his natal Saturn-Neptune opposition, not least because he's going to have transiting Saturn at the beginning of November, stationing on his Sun. So I hope Julian Assange manages to work it out, and obviously I think it's outrageous he's in the situation he's in, and hopefully he gets out of prison as soon as possible. Anyway, that's all I'm going to say for today, and I will talk to you again tomorrow.